guys, today I'm going to be doing my review of Tales of the Abyss for the PS2, a game that really surprised me and is actually now my favorite game in the Tales series. As the game begins, we discover our protagonist, Luke von Fabra, a sheltered, obnoxious son of a duke who suffers from amnesia and frequent, sudden headaches, often accompanied by a strange voice, ever since his capture and subsequent rescue 7 years ago. Luke's sheltered existence is shattered, and his adventure begins as the stunning and formidable Tyr invades the manor, utilizing her beautiful phonic hymns, and attempts to assassinate Luke's mentor. Luke attempts to stop her and accidentally activates a hyperresonance that sends them miles away into a forest within the Malkuth Empire.
No! Stop!
Resound. The will of Lorelei shall reach you and open the way.
Not that weird voice again!
The seventh phonon?
Too late. The seventh phonons have reacted with each other.
In its opening hours, Tales of the Abyss assaults the player with nearly incoherent strings of dialogue, rattling on about 7 phonons and a score that determines fate, or perhaps people really have free will and are just making the score a self-fulfilling prophecy by their belief in it. Warring kingdoms, along with a fractured religious power acting as a third and possibly fourth faction, hyperresonances, along with a textbook worth of mystical technobabble. This all might seem convoluted at first, but it would actually be a more apt description to call it complex. The character of Luke, whose perspective you are taking, is dumbfounded by all the talk of phonons and everything else, so you should be too at first. In a way, you are taking the perspective of the stranger in the strange land who is ignorant of the ways of the world. As Luke grows to understand these concepts, so does the player. Even then, the game never outright lays out everything for the player to grasp. You have to pay attention and take the time to assess new information each time it's presented to you. You have to think. That's the part that I believe leaves the majority of gamers who dislike the stories of Tales of the Abyss or Final Fantasy XII behind. It's incredibly frustrating when someone can't comprehend subtext or a plot that doesn't directly present a singular, easily definable goal with a very clear, black and white main villain. While such writing isn't always bad, it only works if its simplistic and straightforward nature is the intent of the writer for some stated purpose, rather than the result of subpar storytelling. It always amazes me how many people don't grasp that there is more story in how something is said, or what is left unsaid, than the content of what is spoken. Body language and tone can say more than words. Reality exists in a state of constantly fluctuating strands of gray, and a story that implements complex theological and magical concepts would be better served by resistance to such unassuming plots. While many plot points can be seen coming a mile away, they are rarely approached exactly as expected. As a series, Tales of games tend to form from a base of anime and RPG cliches in which specific tropes and archetypes generate characters and basic plot elements. But what differs from game to game is how much the creative team behind the game manipulates and evolves based on those stereotypes into something more interesting and multifaceted. Tales of the Abyss expertly accomplishes this, while still retaining a sense of familiarity that will allow fans of the genre to settle in the early hours. Now, in saying all that, Tales of the Abyss is certainly no Xenogears, but its world, its mythology, and its characters are deep enough to feel real and provide an interesting narrative. In my experience, most, although certainly not all, Tales games have a fairly average plot that is elevated by exceptionally likable and intriguing characters. Tales of the Abyss is no exception to that legacy of excellent characters, but it is coupled with a better overall plot than most entries in the series. The characters are still the highlight of the experience, however, and Tales of the Abyss has some of the best in the series, and particularly the sardonic wit of the powerful necromancer Jade,
Jade Curtis, you're a force to be reckoned with, even with your phonic arts sealed.
That's quite a compliment. I'm honored.
the internal struggles of Ash, the layered personality of the lovable and formidable Tyr, and of course my personal favorite, Guy, Luke's most loyal friend.
Enter the amazing guy.
Even a character like Mew, who could have very easily been overly cute and endlessly annoying, works brilliantly as a balanced source of comedic relief that is written in such a way as to not feel out of place in more emotionally harrowing scenes. The best example, however, is Luke himself. I've heard many people complain about Luke's character in the opening hours of the game, sometimes to the point of stopping playing altogether. But those players don't seem to realize that Luke's arrogant, ignorant, entitled personality is purposefully irritating in the beginning. The best element of this entire experience is the development of Luke's character. Without giving too much away, Luke's character goes through a radical change throughout the course of the game, but that change is brilliantly believable. It's very gradual and comes in realistic steps, and even the end result retains a sense of genuine growth because of the events of the story rather than the story changing to suit a forced change in character. Rarely have I witnessed such an excellent handling of things like Luke struggling to deal with the reality of taking a life for the first time. It feels dramatic and emotional, and comes up multiple times in ever-changing forms as Luke grows and learns to deal with the obstacles presented to him. Even later in the game, when he is tricked into doing something horrible by someone he trusts, he struggles realistically with self-doubt as he combats his urge to achieve redemption. Each character's growth is handled well, but largely in response to a larger change within Luke as his personal inner turmoil becomes the catalyst for continued change around him. The main theme of Tales of the Abyss is the meaning of life through the discovery of the self. The Abyss is not literal, but a figurative embodiment of the internal void that we all struggle to illuminate with our own perception of reality. Purpose is found by defining the self. As with the majority of post-Symphonia Tales games, the voice acting is fantastic, made even better by the wonderful English translation and brilliantly written dialogue in general.
Wow, they didn't take them very far. They aren't even guarding them.
I imagine they were guarding them originally. Right now, they're probably busy trying to revive the Tartarus.
There's a ton of voice content in the game, so asking for more seems unreasonable, but I would have loved to have seen the skits fully voiced. The various sound effects, especially in battle, along with the short end-of-battle quips are all unextraordinary, but without any obvious flaws or annoyances.
Sonic Spear! No way!
Ha! Get out of my base!
The music is fantastic, with lots of memorable tunes that range from sweeping orchestral epics to light-hearted rhythms and more atmospheric melodies. Out of the Tales games I've played at the time of this review, I'd say it's my second favorite overall Tales soundtrack after Tales of Legendia. One thing that is striking to me in particular is that this is the only example in the entire series where I actually prefer the more instrumental version of the opening in the English version. Typically I prefer the original Japanese opening, particularly in Tales of Symphonia, but I actually like this version with the more highlighted electric guitar better. It's honestly one of my all-time favorite RPG openings. The only major issue I've found is a fairly common bug in which the overworld music doesn't load properly, and you continue instead to hear the music from the last town or dungeon you entered as you travel around the world map. Thankfully, reaching a particular point in the game automatically fixes this issue, but it is frustrating. Character animations are more detailed and emotive than any Tales game before it, and easily comparable with the very best of the genre at the time of its release. The anime cutscenes are brilliant, and the majority of the character and creature designs are fantastic. Non-interactive scenes that are in-engine rather than anime are wonderfully directed as well. I love the game's overall color palette and the more mature anime designs of the characters compared to the cel-shaded look of Symphonia or the chibi-esque look of Legendia or earlier sprite-based Tales games. Many of the individual locales and dungeons are well designed and have a detailed and interesting look to them, but not every place in the game is a standout in presentation, and the overworld itself is rather bland. Also, the video quality isn't as sharp as that of Symphonia, a title that is often compared to Tales of the Abyss. But that's actually more of an issue of hardware differences than quality presentation. Overall, the presentation is top-notch. The gameplay doesn't stray too far from the typical Tales formula. Exploration is done across an overworld with specific locations represented and entered by approaching them. You start off on foot and eventually access a land vehicle, a seafaring vessel, and a skyship, typical RPG fare. Enemies are seen in real time on the overworld and in dungeons, and then switch to a battle screen. If an enemy happens to catch you off guard, your party will be randomized in battle, which will really throw you off if you aren't used to varying your party configurations. Combat is a real-time action affair that feels similar to a fighting game with free roaming elements. The free roaming feels very fluid, and between the ability to freely move about the battlefield, switch targets on the fly, and issue commands to your AI-controlled party members, this creates an action-based combat system with plenty of strategy. Occasionally some battles can degrade into button mashing, but that only seemed to be the case if backtracking through an area with largely underleveled foes. Aside from normal weapons-based attacks and item usage, you have an arsenal of other techniques and equipable items at your disposal. Characters can learn add skills from the usage of capacity cores. They can use power attacks called arts, and eventually even more powerful mystic arts, which can be performed while in an active overlimit mode. New to Tales of the Abyss are the Field of Phonons. Whenever a character uses a spell with an elemental alignment, a circle will appear on the ground with a color corresponding to that element. Another character can stand within that circle and unleash an elemental attack. Some enemies can do this as well. Puzzle solving is a common gameplay type found within the game. Numerous puzzles of varying complexity will be encountered along your journey, and most of them are challenging without being nerve-wracking and make creative use of the abilities of Mew and the Sorcerer's Ring. I really found these puzzles to be some of the best in the Tales series just because they were never tedious, they all seemed interesting, and they all seemed to really make sense within their context. Cooking is a valuable skill to learn within the game as you acquire new recipes and ingredients as you travel around the world that you can turn into food which is used as a recovery item of sorts. However, cooking seemed to play a much smaller role in this game than in many other Tales games. Another game feature is the title system, in which characters can earn titles after a series of story events or tasks have been completed. Changing these titles can have various status effects. The last notable feature is the grade system. Common in Tales games, your performance in battle is graded, and you will earn or lose grade points based on your performance. After completing the game, you can start a new game by loading your completed game file, and before you start, you can purchase things in the grade shop with the points you earned in the first playthrough. For instance, you can start the new playthrough with all of your arts retained or a completed world map. There are numerous other glitches I didn't mention over the course of this review, both to save time and because which glitches you encounter and how many will vary entirely depending on the player. None of them, to my knowledge, are game-breaking, but glitches are more prevalent in Tales of the Abyss than any other game I've played in the series, as well as most comparable RPGs. Some people have complained about the almost seemingly unnecessary backtracking in the later portions of the game, but it never really bothered me because the game had so many unanswered questions still at that point where you really needed that extra length. It's a very long RPG, even longer than most Tales games, but it feels necessary because the story itself is bigger. The story itself has more layers, so it needs more time to really deal with all the different elements. And on top of that, when you really get to a point where you have to back travel constantly, you access a fast travel feature, so it really didn't bother me, and in a way it just gave me more of a chance to explore the world. Tales of the Abyss really surprised me when I first played it. I had no idea that after playing it was going to be my favorite Tales game ever, finally displacing Tales of Destiny as my favorite in the series. If you're a fan of the Tales series and have somehow passed this one by, or you are a fan of RPGs and you haven't played any of the Tales games at all, definitely give this one a shot. It's well worth your time.